Hello, good afternoon from London and the Architectural Association. I'm Marina Lathouri and I'm the director of the Masters in History Critical Thinking. And today, myself and three of the students, Nicolas, Sophie and Stefan, we are going to give you some insights into the program. And we are going to answer, if possible, your questions. I would like to start by saying that the MA in History Critical Thinking, it's a 12-month program. We start in September and students present the final work in September after. And the course, it's called, I'll start from the name of the course, called History and Critical Thinking. So that means that it's not a straightforward history course, but we do look at history, we work with history, but for us this is more a means to comprehend, engage critically and position ourselves more within the contemporary. That means that what we do, what we study, what we examine, we ground it in the good sense and knowledge of history. But our aim, our objective, academic objective, is to critically engage with both the historical material, but also with the urgent questions of our time, of the present. Another thing which makes that program rather unique in the context of the AA, but also in the context of other universities, is our emphasis on writing. We do write, we don't design, and perhaps I can pass to the image. We use writing from more an architectural point of view as a design. That's why we say here design by words. And the students explore throughout the year different forms of writing, essays, short reviews, commentaries, interviews, and they try to, through the writing, to engage with design, to engage with architectural questions, to engage with buildings, with the city, with history, develop their analytical and critical skills, but also by the end of the year develop their own voice. The other thing I would like to do very briefly before I also let the students more talk about their experience, their engagement with the different components of the program, is to outline very, very briefly the structure of the course, how we move through the year, because it's a very intense course, it's only 12 months. So the first term we use to provide the students with a very solid base, then so that everybody has a shared common ground. So we focus more on various histories and mainly the question of the writing of history. And also on, we try to clarify notions as modern, modernism, modernity, critique, criticism, and give the students the tools which are necessary in order to move on to the next term, which focuses more on the contemporary. And there we ask the students to act more as critical voices within the group and within the school. We invite a number of speakers, external also to the AA, external to the program, to expose the students to a diversity of perspectives, to a diversity of voices, and also to somehow force the students to engage with these voices. And through that engagement, develop their own identity and their own, refine their own interest. And that's something perhaps I need to say at this point, that it's a small group. It's very diverse, but it's a small group. And this is one of the objectives of the course, to keep the group small and intimate, so that we can have everything more in the format of the seminar. So we all sit around the table like we do now, and discuss, debate, share readings, share ideas, thoughts, and develop questions. And despite the rather well-defined structure of the course, students are very encouraged to explore and develop their own interest. In the second term and the third term, in parallel to the regular courses, we also organize a number of workshops on writing, workshops on drawing, because that's the other aspect. Although we don't design like in other parts of the school and we use more writing and text, one important aspect for us is to engage with various media and drawing, graphic material, photographs, visual material, and use all these as part of our evidence, as part of our resource, in order to engage and develop architectural questions, and from primarily an architectural point of view. And in the third term, along with trips and further workshops on writing, the students start focusing more on the main component of the MA, which is the final thesis. And it's something that they work on during the last 2 terms, during spring and during the summer. But at this point, I would also like to let the students give their insight from this year, Nicholas and Sophie, and Stefan, who was an MA student 3 years ago, and he's currently in the PhD program.
I'm Nicholas. I wanted to discuss a bit how I got into the program, what my expectations were, and where I feel I'm at, and the experience I've had this first term. I come from a design background. I studied architecture, and then I was in practice for 5 years before deciding to do this master. The last 2 years I actually started my own practice, and through design and through practice some questions started to appear which I felt could not be addressed with the design projects I was developing at the time. And these questions were related more to theory and history of architecture. And I relate to what you were saying, Marina, because not history as history for itself, but as groundwork to explore these questions. And this is why I picked this program. And I would like to dwell on a particular structure which I found very interesting for myself in this first term, and it's the relationship between the class that occurs mainly in seminars and the tutorials, the personal tutorials, which I think are, at least for me, were a very important way to both create a framework, a ground knowledge on which to talk about. We did this as a group in the seminars, and then we would have the tutorials where we could address more of our personal questions, and perhaps between both is where we found our questions are more related to contemporary situations, and we found the meeting point between the historical things we were discussing in class, in the seminars, and our own interests we were bringing to the MA.
My name's Sophie, and I decided to do the HCT course after the first part of the architecture degree because I was interested in engaging with architecture in a more critical way and learning how to think and how to write about it. And in doing so, make the work that I would like to do have broader references to a range of different histories as well as different practices. And one of the most intriguing parts of the course is the fact that we're able to go overseas and do trips. And most recently we went to the south of France, to Roquebrune and Cap Martin. with Tim Benton, who was leading a fantastic course about the E1027 house. And, you know, having a expert being able to take you there is just such a rich opportunity, and something that I think they're uniquely able to provide, particularly as the class is so small. And also, you know, doing the trip down there, not everyone was like specifically interested in that, but it opens up a discussion for so many different, that shared experience opens up a level discussion for so many different interests, which definitely feature in the group, which is extremely diverse and brings many different things to the table.
Well, thank you for that. It was listening to you reminded me of my own experience 2 years ago during the program. Just for the audience, I graduated from the program in 2015, in autumn 2015, and embarked right after that in the PhD program. It might be interesting to signal that one of the possible outcomes after graduating from the MA History and Critical Thinking is the opportunity to start a PhD and continuing the topic researched during the last phase of the program. This allowed me, in any case, to go a little bit deeper with embarking in a more in-depth analysis of the subject I have chosen for the dissertation. By the way, these are a few of the dissertations here on the table. Maybe we can zoom out to get them in the frame. My topic relates maybe to one of a critical aspect of contemporary practice, which is I try to engage with the notion of sustainable development, and I'm trying to extract it from the, let's say, more technical realm and insert it in a rather historical context. By doing so, I'm able to offer a contemporary, let's say, discussion on what sustainable development might mean, and by framing and selecting a number of case studies, I'm able to frame it differently in order to get eventually to a number of conclusions which are rather important from architectural point of view. And this being said, I would also like to highlight the opportunity the program offers to engage not only within the program with the interesting people that take part in it, but also engage with other dimensions of the school. By that, I could mention from my own experience the opportunity to sit in juries for undergraduate programs, some of them resulting in a very intense professional relationship with after graduation, and also the other aspect, the fact that we can also open up, and maybe Marina, we can here discuss a little bit and other possibilities, other outcomes of the program that might our audience might find interesting to hear about.
First of all, I would like to go back to what you said, that during the program the students have the opportunity to interact with other parts of the school, either by participating in design juries or by commenting on various public events, public lectures or exhibitions. The students have, the MA students, because they are the only ones in the AA school whose main tool is the writing. So, and they do produce a number of commentaries or reviews of the events, which are then published in the various AA publications. A number of examples are on the table. And then we have a number of joint seminars also with the PhD program. As Stefan said, some of our students, they use the MA as a first step towards the PhD. It's not a prescribed career path for the MA students. As we said, there is a diversity in terms of background, in terms of interest. But once they decide that they want to pursue a PhD after, then we can use the year and we can help them, we support them with that, to develop in one way the proposal for the PhD. So in one way it becomes part of their future studies. Also have to say that we have most of our students are trained architects, and some of our students, they go back to practice, but they use this year to take a break and to dedicate to start to reading and writing and try to explore and develop their own ideas and their own thoughts. And when they go back to practice, they find other ways to engage with practice. There are former MA students who went after and collaborated with design firms, and they were the ones, they were in charge of the publication department or of the competition department. There are many former MA students who are involved actually in the AA, in the undergraduate school, and they teach either in history and theory studies in the first 3 years, or actually in other programs, even in other graduate courses. Or they go back to their home countries and they get involved in teaching there. And of course there are other MA graduates who follow a slightly different path, and they get more involved in galleries or museums or work with other institutions. We have two MA graduates who are now working with, collaborate with the Barbican Center and the V&A Museum. So it's not that the group is diverse, but also the program is very well structured, but at the same time open and flexible enough to accommodate the diversity and actually support the diversity after the program.
And I think that something that also is very valuable is that it is a process where you also, what you were mentioning, that you find your own voice, and perhaps you don't come to the MA program knowing what you will do or what is specifically your interest, but you are exposed to so many different voices. As Sophie was saying, we also engage with buildings. We went to this trip and we got to enter this house, and that in a way changes your ideas, and you incorporate them to your own interests and to your own thoughts. Right now, for example, that we are about to present our essay. For me, that trip was a changing point in my own work. It became a case study that could become the pretext to explore many of the interests I already had, perhaps more in an intuitive level, but then something in the program allows you to develop further.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like, although the program is extremely intense, there's a lot of help along the way. Like, you're working through hard ideas, but you're supported, and the structure of the course allows you to explore those ideas in the way that you want. So, for instance, as Marina was just saying, the diversity of applications that the information you learn has is so great. And coming to the course, I wanted to be able to apply, I wanted to engage with the design, but not necessarily engage with architecture in the strict sense of building and going through the traditional method of the architectural education. And this allowed such a breadth of knowledge which can apply to potential art practice, writing practice, and journalism even. And I think it's just so valid in today's society, which values like multi-skilled and multidisciplinary people. So yeah, it's got a lot of future value.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's also very grounded in history, and I think that's important because it might come through when we speak that there is a little bit of everything, and it's true, it allows for that flexibility, but at the same time we go in depth, really in depth in the study, and we do not approach history superficially, but we really go in depth in text, going through text to then talk about contemporary issues.
And this is maybe Marina has briefly mentioned this in the opening intervention, that it's not only engaging with texts and history, it's also talking about drawings and looking at drawings as other forms of design. When we can even go as far as saying we are reading a drawing, and we are in a constant search for clues that may shed a new light on the topic that we are debating. Of course, the sources that intervene in a piece of research are multiple. We have history, text, we have oral sources, then we have drawings and designs. So this ability to shift in between these various sources is something you acquire through an year-long practice, I believe, and it's something that that has helped me in my research after the program.
Yeah, thank you. Because to emphasize that, because I think it's very important for that particular program, writing, they do learn how to write in an academic manner, because especially some of the students, they will need that for the future. And as Nicolas said, everything is very much grounded in a good sense and knowledge of history. And we ask them to be also extremely precise with the use of language and the use of terms, and actually work through terms and work through the implications of terms and the various uses of term in history. But at the same time, writing for us is also another kind of project. It's an ongoing project, by means of which we try and we want the students to try to explore and engage with design, with architectural issues, and pose, not even if they don't look at buildings, but pose architectural questions, which are two distinct things. Now, perhaps coming to the end of our little presentation, I would like to show to from our recent trips. Here we are in the in Aalto building in Helsinki, where we went last May. The insurance building by Alvar Aalto, and we are in the library of the building. And then we had the chance actually to talk and have a little seminar with scholars from the University of Helsinki, and actually with a number of architects from the city. And the next one is from the recent trip to South France and the visit to the Eden 27 house. And perhaps because I didn't have the chance to go there, but perhaps Nicolas and Sophie can tell us something.
I think that is most telling, and we could have also added maybe a picture from the school itself. But I think what is most telling is that we engage in conversation in a very intimate way, like the scale of the amount of students in the program allows there to be a conversation that is ongoing, that takes place in the classroom, takes place in other parts of the school, and it also takes place in these trips. And I think it builds up a community between us where we can continuously explore these questions.
So at the AA, the library itself is a very beautiful space to work in. But aside from that, the bar, which is just adjacent to it, is a place where you can meet your tutor or meet your colleague, meet your friends and your peers, and the dialogue doesn't really end, which is fantastic. You're always furthering ideas in both a formal setting of the classroom, but also a more casual setting. So it allows for a real breadth and of information to come to you, and that's the intimate nature of the class is something which is reflected throughout the whole school. It's like relatively petite in its size, which means that you do have a sense that your ideas and what you're interested in is being addressed directly, which is just quite fulfilling.
From the image, I have not joined the trip, but from that image I see you are handling a number of slides, right?
Yes.
Maybe you can talk
Yeah,
about how you use those images.
The trip, we have already talked a little bit about the trip, but we did the trip with Tim Benton, which is in charge of the institution that is reconstructing the house or preserving the house. And we were able to engage with that really architectural situation, which is how to preserve architecture. And it was very interesting to be there and to actually go through their process. So there we have some slides that are pictures from the house that appeared in a journal when the house was built in the 20s. And we were asked to relate those images to the new reconstructed spaces inside the house. So in that way engage through reconstruction with the questions of architecture and modernism in the house, really.
This is very interesting and telling about the way we in the program engaged with image, not as a way of representing an idea, but a way of working through the questions through image.
Now, before we conclude, perhaps we can answer a few questions. And if there are no questions from the audience, perhaps I can say that in order to apply to this MA, you need to write a statement. So we don't ask for a portfolio. We welcome writing samples, but they are not, they are optional. And I very much recommend a visit to the school if you are seriously considering to apply for the program. And it was very nice to talk to you. And I would like to thank, first of all, Stefan, Sophie, and Nicholas, and the audience for joining us. And we are very much looking forward to receiving any questions, any queries. You can contact me directly by email or go to the AA website or to our website. And looking forward perhaps to seeing you and receiving your applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.